Bernie Sanders is so dumb that he just bombed a major CNN interview. And he exposed himself for just how ridiculous and contradictory his beliefs are that he's promoting on this big tour he's doing where he's going to red Republican states to try to speak to the working class of America. It's Sean Daniel here, and since Dana Bash won't go after Bernie Sanders when he puts himself in a corner with his own contradictory statements, I'm gonna do it. So get ready, let's go.
It's good to be with you here. We're in Wheeling, West Virginia, and it's so fascinating that this is part of what you call your Fighting the Oligarchy tour, because this is a state where Donald Trump got 70%.
Really?
70%.
No, not tonight.
Well, yeah, and this was an auditorium that was packed. It was at capacity. Still, what makes you think that your message tonight is going to resonate in such a red state?
Well, among other things, when I ran for president, I think here in West Virginia, we won every single county. Look, this is a working class state. It's one of the poorest states in the country. People are hurting, and they want candidates to come before them to stand up for the working class and take on the oligarchs who have so much economic and political power. So I think the message will resonate here. I think it'll resonate in many red states throughout the country, because at the end of the day, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't want to see tax breaks for billionaires. They don't want to see the rich get richer. They want health care as a human right. They want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. They want to be able to live in housing that they can afford.
One of the things that you talked about here, as you've been talking about since even before it passed, is what the president calls his big, beautiful bill. Cuts to Medicaid, other programs. 25% of West Virginians receive Medicaid, 15% rely on food stamps. And yet, as I mentioned, West Virginians overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. How do you square that circle?
Well, that's a longer story that has to do with the failure of the Democratic Party in general to speak to the needs of the working class. This used to be, decades ago, one of the strongest Democratic states in the country. Now it's a strong Republican state, because I think in many ways, the Democratic Party has turned its back on what was its base. But I think our job, and what the reason I'm here and the reason we go to red states all over the country, is to make it clear that there are some of us who are prepared to stand up for the working class. And if we stand together, if we're united, if we don't let Trump divide us up, there is no stopping what we can do as a nation in terms of improving life for ordinary people.
It's not bad if Trump divides America if the way that he divides America is by taking a stand for correct principles. If liberals and other people want to create some division by Trump taking a stand, that's fine. Unity above all and sacrificing principles is a bad idea. And the Democrats are facing that exact problem by trying to appeal to everyone, not offend anyone, and as a result, by not standing for anything, they've fallen.
You said the Democratic Party has turned its back on the working class. You'd said something pretty tough when you were speaking to this crowd about Kamala Harris.
One of the reasons, in my view, that Kamala Harris lost this election is she had too many billionaires telling her not to speak up for the working class of this country.
Ouch.
Well, no, I don't think that's, I like Kamala, she's a friend of mine, but her core consultants, were heavily influenced by very wealthy people. How do you run for president and not develop a strong agenda which speaks to the economic crises facing working families? You have more income and wealth inequality today than we've ever had. You have 60% of our people living paycheck to paycheck. You got a healthcare system which is broken and dysfunctional. And despite spending so much, we're the only major country not to guarantee healthcare to all people. How do you not talk about those issues?
She talked about affordability.
Well, but in a vague, I don't want to rehash that campaign, but I think the clue to Democratic victories is to understand that you got to stand unequivocally with the working class of this country. You need an agenda that speaks to the needs of working people. Is it a radical idea that we join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people? Is that a radical idea? You tell me how many people are talking about that. Is it a radical idea to say that we've got to raise the minimum wage to $17 an hour? Is it a radical idea to say that in the midst of a competitive global economy, we need to make sure we have the best educated workforce, that all of our kids, regardless of income, should be able to get a higher education? These ideas exist all over the world. They don't exist in America. And they don't exist because of the power of the oligarchs economically and politically. All right, let's be clear, in my view. The current political system in the United States of America is broken and corrupt. Does anybody think that it makes any sense at all that Elon Musk can spend $270 million to elect Trump as president and then become the most important person in government? Billionaires should not be able to buy elections. And by the way, that's not just a progressive perspective. Conservatives understand that too.
Okay, Bernie, sit down for a second, sir. Let me educate you. First of all, why, if America's so bad, if the system is set up so terribly and corrupt, like everywhere else is corrupt, by the way, you're never going to get rid of corruption. If it's so bad, why do Europeans, why do third world country people want to come to America for opportunity and freedom? I don't know. Maybe it's one, because in Europe, in the socialist heaven, where you can have all opportunity and taken care of, as Bernie would say, you don't have opportunity. Why? I've lived in Europe. I know. In a few countries. If you want to open a business in Europe, like we can, if you want to start dog walking and earning a few extra dollars on the side each month, in Europe, can you do it legally? Yes, but you need, in some countries, to pay a big fee every month to just have income that comes from something not classified as your job under a company. So can you earn extra money as an Uber driver without opening your own company and you paying $600 in some countries every month to do so? No. Second of all, if you actually talk to Europeans who have great socialized healthcare, right, Bernie? Almost all of them. I've traveled. I've been to like 24 countries, lived in Europe 2 times. When you talk to real people that live in the system, many of them, I would argue most, will come, when you get to the reality of the situation and you get them real, they will complain to no end about how bad the socialized healthcare system is, how bad the doctors are, how long the waiting times are, how many of them actually pay their own money to go to a privatized healthcare, because despite the fact that they pay a ton of taxes, which is going to be my third point, despite them paying all those taxes to have socialized and free healthcare, they don't even go to the free healthcare they have available to them because it's so bad. And then third of all, when you are in those socialized countries, like the EU, you know how high your taxes are. 30, 35, 40%. Where in the same income bracket, if you compare it to U.S. taxes, you can pay basically half the taxes, percentage-wise. So the government takes more of your money. The government pays for your free healthcare, which you don't even like. And then to have opportunity to break out of that system of having a job and being stuck by limitations of being in a company, if you want to, you have to pay a big price. Europe and the socialized places are set up to keep you in the system, Bernie. And that's why the U.S. is better.
What makes you so sure that the solution that you're offering, which is a more assertive federal government, is something that is going to fly in places where people have been voting in recent years Republican and have an inherent distrust of government?
Well, they should, and they should have a distrust for a number of reasons. The government is too bureaucratic and not responsive. But, and let me tell you what I'm sure you already know, is that if you look at the polling, and I asked the people here today, you heard me ask.
Anybody here think that the American healthcare system is vaguely effective?
Nobody in America thinks it's working. We spend twice as much as other countries, 85 million uninsured or underinsured. 60,000 people die a year because they can't get to a doctor on time. Do you think that in America, with all of our genius, all of our capabilities, we spending so much money cannot provide a high-quality system that guarantees health care to all people? And do you think people here don't know that? They know it. They know we can do it. Throughout Europe and other countries, you don't have to leave college $50,000, $100,000 in debt or $500,000 in debt if you go to medical school. That makes zero sense at all. Look, let's be clear, and the message of tonight and what I will continue to give. You have a government today that is run by the wealthiest people in this country. They are extremely greedy people. They want it all, and we've got to stand up to them. Unfortunately, for many decades, that has not been the Democratic Party, and that has got to change.
I'm sure you've heard about some Democrats who are talking about embracing the so-called abundance movement.
Yeah.
The idea that liberal politicians have created too much regulatory red tape, and it stops government from getting anything done. I spoke recently to Democratic Congressman Richie Torres, who said that Democrats shouldn't be the party of more government, but the party of better, cheaper, and faster government. What do you make of that idea?
Well, I think that it is clear. Look, I deal with bureaucracy every day at the federal level, the state level, at the local level. It's absolutely true. To build a house, to do this, do that, you have to go through all kinds of things. To apply for, Medicaid, you got to fill out 87 forms. Dealing with your insurance companies, you got to fill out 1 million forms. We live in a world which is much, much too complicated. So if the goal is to make it sure that within environmental safeguards, we can move forward much faster, the answer is yes. But that is not the fundamental problem facing America. The fundamental problem facing America is that you got a handful of oligarchs who have enormous wealth, enormous economic power, enormous political power, and they want even more. That is the fundamental issue. Should we make government more efficient? Absolutely.
Whew. So the problem with America is that we have corrupt people keeping people down, keeping everyday people down, right? But in Europe, the socialized system that's great for all Americans, the powerful people in government get to keep more of your money, more of what you bring home. So technically, I would say they have more control over you. If I go and work hard just as an employee and I make great strides and I improve and I start getting a better income to improve my life, my family's life, I got to give the government way more money in Europe than I have to in the US. Or if I want to earn my own income outside of a job, it is so much harder to do so in Europe. So if that's the case, I would argue that the European politicians and the powerful people in Europe actually have more control than the ones in the US, because we at least have more opportunity in the United States, financially, employment-wise. When you go look at the types of jobs you can get in Europe, it is so much less creative and fun than the ones in America. That's just been my experience when I've looked and lived in 2 countries. But if the government wants more control over your life, like they do in Europe compared to the US, wouldn't you say that they can influence the outcome of your life more directly and thus be more of a limitation in the growth that you can have? I don't understand this argument of arguing for socialized systems that take more control of your life and income, but then saying the American system controls you more and it's more corrupt. It might be more corrupt because there's more money, but we at least have more options. It's itsSeanDaniel here. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to watch Dana Bash from CNN not really know what to do as the U.S. ambassador to NATO announces Trump's big power move against Putin, check out this video right here, and I'll see you in the next one.